Okay, so my name's Calum MacGillivray. I'm an exhibitions officer at the National Library of Scotland. So I thought today I would just start by getting everyone to think about the mountains that you're most fond of. So they might be snow-capped Munros or pristine Alps or towering Himalayas. Maybe imagine running your hands across the boulders or putting them through a cold snowdrift. Maybe you're there to explore with companions, or to write, paint, think, climb, or just be free with your own thoughts. So now we'll come back to reality with an image that perhaps is a bit more familiar to all of us, and I think especially those of us who were trying to design exhibition and public engagement experiences over the pandemic. So with the most recent project at the National Library of Scotland, which is called Petticoats and Pinnacles, we really had to try and find a compromise between both of these images. We wanted to create something that would feel inspiring and engaging, but also would be safe and accessible with people who feel worried about the pandemic and the virus. But really this kind of troubled development period actually gave us a lot of time to think more clearly about accessibility and how to create a really high quality experience for a range of people. Also thinking that a lot of people may not visit us physically, but may engage online instead. So I'm going to talk about how this exhibition became a test bed for developing new, more accessible exhibition experiences. So first off, a bit about the exhibition. So it's called Petticoats and Pinnacles, Scotland's Pioneering Mountain Women. And it covers around 2 centuries of writing from women who climbed and explored in the mountains. Many of them were actually scientists and artists and writers, as well as climbers. They all overcame physical and social barriers to spend time in the mountains. And in the wake of the pandemic, we felt it was really important to create an experience that would be restorative and inspirational, but also accessible to a range of people. So when I say accessible, what do I mean specifically? In the context of this exhibition, this meant drawing from visitor feedback and best practice research to overcome barriers to engagement, and also working to create a rich and varied experience for both physical and virtual visitors. So we received a lot of very valuable feedback from our previous major exhibition on different accessibility themes, and we were able to take time to discuss and act on that during the planning and design stages for Petticoats and Pinnacles. And we really tried to see this feedback and the points raised as opportunities to create a better experience for everyone, rather than as hurdles that we had to overcome. So that was a really kind of good way, I think, to approach this project, and we saw all as positive. So here are some of the key takeaways on the theme of accessibility, how we approached them. So first of all, we did receive feedback from our previous exhibition that the gallery felt quite cramped, visitor route was tight, there's a lot of material, a lot of display cases, a lot of kind of physical build, walls and partitions. So this became an opportunity for us to select fewer objects, cutting down the amount of space we were using in the gallery, and focus on impact rather than the number of objects that we're showing. I think as Alex touched on earlier in her talk, this is something that can be quite difficult in library exhibitions. I think there can be a tendency to try and fill the cases because we feel, oh, it's a lot of writing, these are books, perhaps they don't speak in the same way that a sculpture or a tool or another type of object would. But in fact, we chose to look differently in this exhibition and to really see the impact that things like maps and diaries can have as very beautiful visual objects too. We also received feedback about the low light levels. And again, as Alex mentioned in her talk, we typically would light exhibitions at around 50 lux for the preservation of collections. This can make visibility difficult for text panels and also for visitors who have trouble with their sight. So this kind of encouraged us to tell some of the key stories using audio and video formats that wouldn't be affected by low lighting. And it also helped us give our lighting designer a really clear brief to emphasize key objects and content and kind of create little pools of better lit areas in the exhibition. And then sort of the dreaded feedback for a library exhibition, I think, is too much text. Visitors don't always have the time or indeed the inclination to read everything that we put on panels. And I think it's something that's always a discussion that we have that can be quite spirited when we're planning exhibitions, is how much text is the right amount. Exhibitions aren't essays, they're not books. So really we were trying to think about ways that we could take all this interpretation, all these really great thoughts, and kind of present them in other ways. So in this exhibition, we thought about bringing the text out of labels and wall panels into audio and web content. And for the text that did remain on labels and on the walls, we've really focused on telling compelling stories at multiple different levels of engagement, so that you would get a sense of the exhibition and the really important stories we were telling, no matter how much you read. Just to speak a little bit about the floor plan, devising a floor plan that would be easier to navigate for a range of visitors actually gave us a lot of opportunities to be creative and playful. But in the initial pitch, the design agency that we worked with had proposed structuring the exhibition like a mountain ascent. So the visitor would ascend to the far side of the gallery, which would sort of be like a summit camp at the top of the mountain, and then you would descend again towards the exit. And perhaps they even predicted that once in the line we'd be worrying about one-way systems and visitor flow. So this worked out really well for opening during the pandemic. We envisaged the summit area as a place to kind of metaphorically pitch your tent and camp out under the skies before you descend towards the other half of the exhibition and the exit. So while having a seat at the summit area, which also functions as a rest area, we were also able to create a small cinema that showed footage from the library's moving image archive of women in the mountains, which was a really nice opportunity for us. This is just a selection of one of the key wall panels from the exhibition, focusing on the Scottish poet Nan Shepherd. So the designers were very inspired by the kind of cut and paste nature of the journals and diaries that we were showing in the exhibition. And that's actually married up really well with the idea that we had to approach the interpretation and break that up into different levels. We sort of worked with and adapted an analogy called skim, swim, dive for interpretation, which was originally devised by Charlotte Sexton, who was at the National Galleries, when she first presented that as a way of looking at digital content. So we decided to sort of reinterpret that for text and to create a hierarchy. Essentially, the idea was that anyone who just wanted to have a very kind of light, casual visit could skim. This would mainly involve looking at images, kind of key headings and large quotes. And this would give you a sort of nice overview of the exhibition and who the key figures were. If you wanted to swim, you were going a bit deeper, so perhaps you would be reading the kind of key wall panels, you would examine objects in more detail, and then move on to dive. This is for people who really, really wanted to delve into the exhibition, read every label, look at objects very closely, and engage with other types of interpretation like AV. So we wanted that high-level skim experience to feel really restorative and inspiring, and to let the personalities of the women that the exhibition focuses on shine through. And an early decision that we made was to put the focus on the women's own writing in the hierarchy, rather than the text that our curator had written. So this is always presented first and is presented in bold. And recognising that these were still very long, we decided to present these also as an audio tour as well, which would allow a different range of audiences to enjoy these really beautiful bits of writing. So to create this audio tour, we used an app called Smartify and commissioned recordings of extracts from each of the women's key works, which we created into this short audio tour. And you can actually listen to this from anywhere in the world, either by accessing the app or on your own computer, and it can be enjoyed in tandem with other content uploaded to the service. Smartify is mainly aimed at, I suppose, museums, galleries, and other institutions of primarily visual collections, but we actually found that it was very useful for us in terms of improving accessibility for some of our written collections. So we were actually able to upload digital images of writing and letters and provide a transcription in the app. So while you were walking around the exhibition, If there's a letter that you can't quite read the text of, you can bring it up in Smartify and read it in much clearer font and at a better size, which was really valuable for us. We also were able to upload a range of very nice artworks that we weren't quite able to fit into the final object list, but you can sort of browse those as a gallery on the app while you listen to the audio as well. A really important part of making this exhibition accessible was to create a really good digital offer. We had an existing web resource called Aiming High, which was created in 2018 to spotlight the achievements of female mountaineers. And actually, a lot of the key figures from the exhibition are already featured there. So what we decided to do was to just enrich this resource rather than creating something totally bespoke for the exhibition. So we added new content and research that we had devised as we were working on the project. Aiming High sort of offers a flavour of the exhibition for people who can't physically visit. One of the things we were really happy to do in Aiming High was to make a family-focused touchscreen game that you can play in the gallery available from home on Aiming High, and this works on a range of devices. There are also downloadable educational resources, and soon we're hoping to make available a range of interviews with contemporary female climbers. Really the focus for enriching Aiming High was to create a different experience from visiting the physical exhibition. We really wanted to make the digital, digital experience to add value rather than to simply replicate all the text and images that we've used in the physical exhibition. I think kind of learning more about approaching digital and physical exhibition visitors and realising they have different needs is something that we'll really take forward from this exhibition too.
Can I just give you a prompt on the time there, Calum, please?
That's
if you could just...
fine, thanks Diana. Just to very quickly cover learning and next steps then. More audience evaluation, formative evaluation at the beginning of the exhibition for our future projects is going to be really important. We also want to look at digital much earlier in the process and really start to embed that into exhibitions. We also have an exhibitions framework which contains a suite of documents that guide anyone working with the library on creating exhibitions. So we'll continue to kind of update our accessibility guidelines based on learning from our new projects. And also maybe to touch on Susanna's research here, think more about how we actually experience books and how we can bring that into exhibitions, perhaps with emotional connections or tactile. Thank you very much.